Hello, this is Ben Hollifield, here to show you the new TrendSeeker app for ServiceNow. A frequent request we get from our customers is the ability to perform proactive problem management in their instances. And what I mean by that is to sort of keep track of trends on incidents and other things in your ServiceNow system to identify problems occurring before they get too serious, kind of get out in front of issues that are emerging and react to them appropriately before they become a real problem. And we gave you some of that capability with an app called Trend Detector a few months back. And TrendSeeker is just the evolution and the rebranding of that Trend Detector app. We got a lot of feedback from you folks, things you'd like to see in the app, and we've given you most of those, so we think you're really going to like it. So let's hop on in here and take a look. So once you install this app, you'll see TrendSeeker over here in your left nav, and everything is driven from your TrendSeeker rules. So let's look at those. And we talked about proactive problem management. But we really have to say that TrendSeeker can do proactive anything management. We don't limit you to just looking at incidents and identifying problems. You can actually trend against any table, any bit of data in the system, and react to it accordingly. Now, I don't want to get too in-depth into the configurations of each of these rules because we'd be here all night. There's a lot more power and flexibility and a lot more options in this new version. Rather, I want to just briefly highlight some of our use cases to show you what's possible, and then I want to dig in deeper to one more slightly complex configuration to really show you what new capabilities we have to offer in the new version. So examples of the kind of things you might want to trend on. Here's one, high maintenance user. We want to track if there are more than 3 incidents by the same caller in a 7-day period. Something else we might like to do is knowledge needed. We might want to track if there are 20 requests on the same topic in 1 month. Maybe we need to generate a knowledge article so our users can come in and find their own answers without having to generate requests that we then have to work. How about toxic workplace? If there are 3 HR cases in the same location in a 3-day period, maybe that's a toxic location. Maybe we need to spin up a parent HR case to find out what's wrong at that location and do something about it. And then for our example we'll go back here to CI problem. This is the pure proactive problem management case right here. We want to know if there are above average P1 incidents for the same CI over a period of time. And here in the description, we're really showing you what we're doing here. We detect if they're above average on a rolling 30-day average plus standard deviation scale, above average P1 incidents on any CI outside of our blackout schedule. And if that's met, we want to generate a problem. And so let's scroll down and see what the configuration actually looks like. And you'll notice that there are a lot of annotations on these forms. We encourage you to enable annotations by clicking on the question mark icon up here. A lot of useful information here, and it'll help you to understand what's going on. And in our configuration, we have 2 tabs, what to detect, what to create. And that's exactly what they do. Detection is telling us what we're going to detect. And let's look at all the options we have here. And you'll notice there's a lot more here than there was in Trend Detector. So let's talk about them a little bit. First of all, our detection table. We're detecting on incident because we're wanting to detect how many incidents have happened for a certain CI. We want to do this over a certain time frame. So we're going to get the count of these applicable incidents over the course of 7 days, 168 hours. And then we're going to compare that to a threshold to see if we're getting outside of our comfortable range. We also have a cooldown period. So if we're having a large group of incidents come in on a CI, we don't want to keep on spawning new correlations. So as we get new incidents on that CI, we're just going to go ahead and load them into the same correlation and keep track of them all in the same place. However, if we don't see any new activity, any new incidents on that CI over the course of 200 hours, that's our cooldown period, then we'll mark this correlation inactive. And it will no longer be added to. And then we'll start keeping track again, and if we see the same situation happen, we'll just spin up a new correlation, no problem. Then we have apply aggregate. Now here we're applying aggregate around the configuration item field. This makes sense because we want to track incidents all in the same configuration item. And here, something new in TrendSeeker, we're applying a schedule. So here, if we're applying a schedule, we can choose any schedule in the system, say Blackout Wednesdays, and we can only count records that are created either inside inclusive or outside exclusive of that schedule. So here we're going to ignore any incidents that are created during our Blackout Wednesdays because we're considering that an abnormal time. We don't want that to go into our statistics. We have a condition field here too. You can set conditions for the incidents that must be met in order for them to be counted. In this case, we just want P1 incidents. And then over here, we get a little more interesting. So we still have the old Trend Detector static threshold where you can just set a hard number, and if we go above that number, then spin up a correlation. Here we do now give you the capability to go above or below a threshold. Traditionally, you want to know if things go above because that indicates there's a lot of activity. Maybe there's an issue. But you may have things like, say, number of emails coming in where you're used to staying at a pretty high threshold. And if it goes below that threshold, you want to get concerned. So you can't go above or below now. The new feature we have here is scripted thresholds, and this gives you a ton of power. You still have the ability to go above or below the threshold, but now we're also giving you the capability to use threshold scripts. And what these do is these are actually calculating statistical measurements that you are now using as your thresholds. And it's going against the number of records. We have a few that we're giving you with the app out of the box. Here the number is average plus 1 standard deviation. We have average minus 1 standard deviation, highest all-time value or lowest all-time value. And so what this enables us to do is to have dynamic statistical measurements over a given window. So here we're saying that we want to, essentially, the threshold is the average, rolling average over 30 days plus 1 standard deviation. So as our business evolves and usage of CIs and the size of our population increases, we expect these numbers are going to change the valid thresholds. So no longer do you have to go in and change the hard thresholds and try to keep track of what's appropriate. We'll do that for you. We're going to keep track of these rolling averages, rolling statistics, and as long as things stay within the appropriate range based on statistical history, we won't spin up a correlation. Only whenever they fall out of the abnormal range, then we'll react. And so that's essentially it for the detection. So we're basically looking for any P1 incidents on the same configuration item, or more P1 incidents on the same configuration item than our statistical average plus 1 standard deviation over 30 days. And if we reach that threshold, what do we want to do? In this case, we're going to create a problem. You can create any kind of record on any table in the system you want to do. You can apply a template to that record. Of course, you also don't have to create a record, but here it is valuable, creating a problem. And we're just going to give that new problem the same CI, that's the one that triggered this, and just a simple short description. So that's all great. We see our rules there. Now let's go run them, see what it looks like. So click this and run the job now, and you'll see it goes pretty quick. There's some logging, and then let's look at the correlations that we found. We did find 2 correlations. Here's one for caller ID, and this was for our high maintenance user. If we hop into it, this was an old static threshold rule, and we can see that we found 3 records found with caller ID of Joe employee between this time. It's above the defined threshold of 2. So this quickly tells us what was triggered, why was it triggered, and then we link to all the records that triggered that and the rule that triggered it. So we can actually hop into those incidents and see the incidents that were part of this correlation. We can go back and look at the other one for the CIs, and this is for our P1 incidents on the same CI. Here we can see that 2 records were found with a CI value of SQL Server between these times, with conditions matching priority 1. And this is above our calculated threshold of 1.71, which was calculated by script above average plus 1 standard deviation based on our available data from the past 30 days. And we can see the counts over the past 30 days that we have gathered so far. And this will continue to grow the longer a rule runs, and exclusive of this schedule. So it really tells you everything that went into the triggering of this correlation. And then again, links to both the detected records that caused it and the created record, the new problem record that was created as a result of that. So that's how it works. You can see this gives you a lot more power, and it's a lot more dynamic than Trend Detector was before. So we think it's going to enable you to be a little more intelligent about the way you set up these trend detections. And we've got a few more things in the left nav we'll show you. We have just a listing of all the Trend Detector links that were created for different rules and different detected records, created records. We have a metrics, and this is where we're keeping track of historical metrics for those statistically calculated thresholds. You shouldn't ever need to come in here and mess with these. We encourage you not to, but they're there if you need to look at them. Then we have threshold scripts, and that's where our averages and our highest, lowest value scripted thresholds came from. We made this in such a fashion that you can create your own. So here we're providing these, and these are probably the most valuable ones that we can think of right now, but maybe you want to say if it's 10% above average or 10% below average. You can actually go in here and, given some variables we're providing, generate your own thresholds in script and use those as your thresholds for your TrendSeeker rules. Simple properties just to enable or disable debug logging, and then capability to run job now. That's pretty much it. You don't need to run this on demand. These rules actually run every 12 hours by default. So once you configure your TrendSeeker rules, it's kind of set it and forget it. You set these things, and then they run in the background, and they will react to correlations when they happen according to the way you've had them configured. So yeah, we think this is very powerful. We hope we've ticked a lot of the boxes, enhancements you guys were asking for from Trend Detector. This will be available on the new ServiceNow App Store coming soon. So as soon as it's out there, go get it. Let us know any feedback, any more enhancements. We hope to make this better as time goes on, and we hope you find it useful. Thanks a lot.